Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, Kate Geek XX Chic, and we're back with another review to The Walking Dead. We're now reviewing episode 9 of season 11, which was called No Other Way. There we go. So we basically wrapped up the whole arc around Maggie and Negan and Gabriel and all those groups who went off to go find the food and supplies that were desperately needed at Alexandria, and their face off against the group of mercs that had basically taken over the home that Maggie had had before she returned to Alexandria. And it wasn't pretty. It was definitely a bloody and painful situation, but we see that after a showdown of basically Maggie's group slowly but surely taking down the majority of Leia's group, it came down to a standoff that we saw there where there was basically an ultimatum made. They caught one of the people that Daryl knew were someone that meant a lot to Leah, and of course, Gabriel and such were still in the wind. But the point was that they wanted to be able to leave this town with the supplies and be able to get there knowing that these mercs were not going to just follow them after some point and just take them out methodically the way they had been for so long. So we see that Daryl tried to strike a deal, and even though he said that it wasn't because of Leia, it kind of was, right? Like, he wasn't wrong in the sense of if there was a way to do it without necessarily both of them losing people that they cared about, it was a way that they should have explored. But Daryl really should have seen that after Leia basically pinned the death of Pope on him and basically said she was going to kill everybody that he came with, that should have been his wake-up call that Leah is never going to be the person that he thought she was. She never really was, actually, right? I think that Daryl had sadly a case of idealizing what he thought Leia was and romanticizing that time they had together into thinking that she was somebody that was more like him or more like the people he spent time with all these years. But the reality is that Leah is and always was a mercenary, and she was always going to prioritize her way, her people, basically the idea that she deserved to have whatever she wanted because she was strong enough to take it. And that was that, right? And it's true she had a soft spot for Daryl. Obviously, the reason he's still breathing is because she didn't have it in her to kill him herself, but that's not enough, right? Daryl obviously had, love and care for all the people that were in his group, and Leia was never going to find it in her heart to care about them, especially if it meant, in her mind, sacrificing her own family. There was just no, as the episode said, other way in her way, like in her mind, sorry. So, and we saw that when she had a sniper set up, ready to basically kill them all and go back on whatever deal that she planned to make with them anyways. But even so, we saw in the end that Daryl did indeed let her go, despite everything, because he does love her, right? I think that was actually Daryl's first love. Twisted and scary as she turned out to be, that was the first person I think Daryl ever fully let his guard down with and let himself be himself with. I don't think he'll ever be able to kill her unless it comes down to literally like her life over somebody he loved. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that his letting her go doesn't come back to bite him in the ass in a bad way. Who knows? If she does go out there and find a new way to survive, she might end up turning out to be clutch later on, maybe in some way, but we'll have to see. That kind of came back to a very interesting point. Like, we had a little bit of a talk on morality. We had Father Gabriel have it with the other priest, and then again at the end where Maggie decided to try to kill all of them when it was all said and done. With Father Gabriel, we've seen it since basically season 10, really. We've seen him going back and forth, challenging whether or not he really is indeed a man of faith anymore. Does he believe in God anymore? So many bad things have happened. So many people he's cared about have been hurt by other humans, by him trusting people and having that trust backfire. So, he definitely is going through his own situation of, like, now he's kind of, like we saw in the last season the last year in the earlier part of the season, there we go, where he basically was like, God isn't here anymore. Like, I don't think God's listening. So whether that means that he's completely no longer a man of faith, we don't know. He is still wearing the collar. He still doesn't, he refuses to kind of take that part of his identity off. But we did see that when he was talking through the walkie-talkie and he had the gun pointed at those mercs, he said to call me Gabriel, right? And I think it's very pointed that he didn't say Father Gabe, which is something that he'd been using beforehand. So I'm not mad at it. I think that Gabriel needs to evolve and change with this world because the way he was trained up in the clergy and the stuff that he has to do now to survive are clearly not lining up for for obvious reasons, I should say. But he's got to find a way to live with himself and the decisions that he makes. But seeing the way he looked when he got back to Alexandria, when it was all said and done, I would say that those things are still haunting him a little bit. Some of the things that priest was saying were definitely making sense to him in the sense of like, do you think this is what God wants, etc., etc. These are all things I think that Gabriel definitely mulls over. But like I said, we're not exactly, this post-apocalyptic world doesn't exactly make it easy to be a completely strong moral compass. And we saw that earlier with Rick's character, right? Like Rick started out in one very firm place on the moral spectrum, but by the time we got to his final seasons, he was a completely different man. But that was necessary for him to adapt to his environment and protect the people that he cared about, including himself. So anyway, that was with Father Gabe. But then again, later on with Maggie, we see that she had the opportunity to try to honor the deal that Leah just minutes before tried to break and renege on. And you see that really this is what Daryl was hoping for, right? Daryl was kind of hoping it would be a situation where they would just leave and then he could leave with his people and everybody gets to go away and live and both families get to survive. But we see that, she takes one look at, oh gosh, I can't remember his name right now, but Josephine's bro. And it just, you can see that at that moment, it was kind of like her breaking point, like everything she'd suffered to get there. And then what they went through. And once they got there, all the people she's lost, all the death, all the things she's had to do to get to this point. And then once again, coming this close to losing her life again. And then knowing that there was still a very strong possibility that when it was all said and done, they were probably going to come back and hunt them down anyways. It was too much. Like Maggie was like, no, screw it. Like, this is too much. I've lost too many people. Too many innocent people have died as a result of this selfish ass group that clearly had no remorse and clearly did not think anything that they did was wrong. So she made an executive decision to make sure that they would never follow her again. Again, we know that Leia's still out there, but you get my point. She finished them all off, and she would have finished off Leia if Leia hadn't started running. You could see that Daryl has his thoughts on her decision to make that. I don't think he was happy with it, but it's one of those things where on the one hand, was it kind of morally wrong? Yes, maybe. But I feel like we're at a point in this world where there are certain loose ends you just can't afford to leave open anymore. And that would be one of them, unfortunately. Like I said, the Mercs made it very clear that they are not the type to just forgive and forget. They have no lines, no boundaries. They will kill man, woman, child. They don't care if it means their survival. Pope hunted them doggedly for how long, even after they had the fort. Like, I think Maggie had a really, like, I understand why she did what she did. Like, there was just, for the sake of being able to sleep at night back in Alexandria with her children, or her child, I should say, and all the other children of that community, those Mercs couldn't be left to live. Because I didn't believe for a second that they weren't going to, at some point, decide to go back and get revenge, because that is the way the Pope had trained them to be, right? That was literally ingrained into their mind, that they take revenge no matter what. Yeah, it was a bit of a moral dilemma in some ways, but I don't think Maggie has any regrets. And I do think, like I said, in this particular case, it was the right call. But I also, you could see it on her face. She wasn't happy about it. This is not something she took joy in. And I don't think she likes the kind of person she's had to become to survive, but that is, kind of what is part of this world. But seeing her cry when she had to go back and find Alden, who we all knew was going to turn, dealing with that, letting her cry and kind of get that out. That was kind of a necessary scene, I think, after what we saw in the first half of the season with her on the train, that speech she gave Alden about how she had to become this hard-hearted, what, in order to survive this world. The fact that she was crying, mourning him, and not just him, like that cry was definitely for everybody that she lost along the way. It shows us that she wasn't really buying into all the stuff she told Alden, right? This is the rhetoric she tells herself every day, or whatever she has to do something hard, so that she can tell herself it's okay. The PTSD catches up with these characters after a while, no matter what. But yeah, it was nice to see that she had a moment to go through those emotions and experience them on her own terms. And then, of course, we saw that Negan is out, understandably. I knew he wouldn't say anything about Maggie. He could have stopped her from going after the other Mercs, but I knew he wouldn't stop them, because that's exactly what he would have done. But we saw in the end, he said, look, I know based on what I just saw there, even though you made a deal with me saying you weren't going to kill me if I helped you, I have no doubt that the day's going to come that you're going to think that you found the justification to put a bullet in my head, and I'm not going to wait around for that day. So I understand where Negan's coming from, but I'm glad this happened, because I said this from the get-go, that I thought it was a little ridiculous that Negan even thought that Maggie should just get over the fact that he murdered Glenn in cold blood and then rubbed her face in it afterwards, right? I mean, and he even said to her flat out that, like, I don't regret it. Like, I would have done it again. So knowing that and knowing how passionate Maggie is about the people she cares about and the fact that she is still fiercely angry at Negan for what he did. Yeah, I mean, I think there just would have been a matter of time before Negan would have crossed the line that Maggie would have considered justifiable to kill him. So his leaving, I think, is the best thing that could have happened. I really think he should have left as soon as she showed up, to be perfectly honest. He has no rights to be in Alexandria. Yes, he's done a lot for them. Yes, he's changed somewhat from what we saw when he was first introduced, but he still is somebody who's brought a lot of pain and suffering to Alexandrians and Maggie in particular. And so I think if he really wanted to show that he cared or that he really does understand the situation, he should have left when she came. But hey, him leaving now, even if it's out of self-preservation, I don't care the reasons. Good riddance, right? Be on your way. I'm not talking much about what happened back in Alexandria. I feel like it was kind of filler for the other stuff that was happening over with the Mercs, but we see that the storm was awful, but as usual, the crew came through by the skin of their teeth. But as we saw, between the storm, the fire, the walkers that came from Beta's horde, like Alexandria is pretty much done. Like it needs a complete rehaul, a complete overhaul, I should say. And they don't have the manpower, the resources, or any of those things in order to do it and remain safe, right? Because if another herd came through there, they were finished, right? They knew that. There was no way they were going to be able to do that twice. We saw that, as we predicted, Eugene did crack and tell. Because of Walking Dead World Beyond, I always get the name, the CRM and the Commonwealth mixed up. But anyways, he did tell them the location of Alexandria. They showed up. They are at the moment claiming that they're willing to help Alexandria rebuild or allow some of them to come back. But we all know that this is not a place that gives anything for free. There's way more to it. The smiley face on Eugene and the speech he gave tells me that Eugene still very much has the wool pulled over his eyes about this place and what it's all about. I knew right off the bat, like Daryl, Maggie, and Carol are not going to fit in this world. There's just no way. And if Rick and Michonne were still around, they would have been like, oh, hell no, too. So it's going to be interesting to see now going through the last part of the season how they're going to try to integrate with the society, because obviously the Commonwealth's not going anywhere. And there is the hard decision about the fact that they do have kids and sickly people and people who are hurt. Like, they do need the help, but are they willing to pay the price, or can they pay the price that the Commonwealth's going to ask in return for all this free help? This is where I think we get to what we saw at the end there with Maggie being back at Hilltop, back behind gates, and basically looking like she's not letting anybody in. And it's very shocking to see Daryl as the head of that group. Why is he there? Why is he opposing Maggie again? So many questions, but we're just going to continue watching this season to find out. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you like this, please give this video a thumbs up, and we will see you in the next video.